Hello and welcome back to the Google Workspace Update podcast from Strawberry 7. My name is Adam.
And my name is Adam.
We're here every week to bring you the latest updates happening in the world of Google Workspace. Remember that this podcast is available in audio format from your regular podcast provider and also in video format on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Strawberry7.
Coming up on the show today,
we have 8 updates for you today, and I've got to tell you, some of these updates are really, really nice, especially if you're an admin listening. Really nice updates. So we've got updates from Google Docs, Sheets and Slides. That's one update. Google Admin, Chat, Classroom, Meet, Admin, Meet, and Tasks. So that's what I mean about some admin stuff here. And especially if you take care of Google Classroom, you're going to really like that Classroom update. As always, there is a link in the podcast or video description to the document that we read from. This contains more detailed information, relevant links, pretty pictures, and even some moving graphics showing all of these features in action. So let's get to it.
on with the show. Right, so first up this week, we've got an update for Google Docs, Sheets and Slides. I think this is our only little update looked that we have this week. So additional updates for the Google Docs, Sheets and Slides apps on Android devices. So in continuing Google's efforts to improve the Google Workspace experience on large screen Android devices, Google is making some updates. So there is the ability to access a vertical context menu when you use mouse right clicking in the Google Docs and Slides apps. There's also the option to use a hardware keyboard to insert a range of formula via the arrow keys in the Google Sheets app. And Google has added some more formula-related keyboard shortcuts as well. So I've added a link in our document, and that will give you some more information about those keyboard shortcuts.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Adam. I don't think there's actually a rollout phase or availability here. So I guess we're assuming this is sort of for everybody who's on every different tier and using these apps on Android devices, I'm guessing.
Everybody everywhere all at once. Yes.
Everybody everywhere all at once, exactly, yeah. Yeah, really nice. We've done some updatelets on these Android, large screen devices before, and we've sort of talked about them before, so really nice to see some extra little things coming in there. If you're an Android user using the mouse or hardware keyboard, I'm sure you're going to find these really, really useful. Like Adam says, there's a nice little link there for some of those shortcuts if you do want to look them up for the keyboard. And there's a lovely moving graphic showing this in action, but I'm sure you can all imagine what a context menu looks like on a device. So, I don't have anything more to say about that. Adam, thank you very much for that little update. What have we got next?
Right, up next is our first admin update of the week. So, simplify and strengthen sign-in by enabling passkeys for your users is now available in open beta. So Google Workspace is enabling the use of passkeys as a simpler and safer alternative to passwords to sign into Google accounts. Additionally, Workspace admins can now allow users to use passkeys to skip passwords at sign-in for Workspace apps. This feature gives users the option to skip entering their password and sign in with passkeys using fingerprint, face recognition, or other screen lock mechanism across phones, laptops, or desktop. So this feature is available as an open beta, which means admins can use it without enrolling into a specific beta program. Passkeys have been designed with user privacy in mind, so when a user signs in with a passkey to their Workspace apps, such as Gmail or Google Drive, the passkey can confirm that a user has access to their device and can unlock it with a fingerprint, face recognition, or other screen lock mechanism. The user's biometric data is never sent to Google servers or other websites and apps. Passkeys are a new passwordless sign-in method that can offer a more convenient and secure authentication experience across websites and apps. Passkeys are based on an industry standard and available across popular browsers and operating systems that people use every day. Google early data shows that passkeys are 2 times faster and 4 times less error-prone than passwords. Passkeys are based on the same public key cryptographic protocols that underpin physical security keys, such as the Titan security key, and therefore can be resistant to phishing and other online attacks. In fact, Google research has shown that security keys provide a stronger protection against automated bots, bulk phishing attacks, and targeted attacks than SMS, app-based one-time passwords, and other forms of traditional two-factor authentication. For a closer look on how passkeys work under the hood, you can also check out Google's technical blog post, and I've added a link to that in our document.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all that information, Adam. I think one of the key things to know here, as you've sort of explained there, is passkeys is not... This isn't like a Google thing. This is something that's happening wider within the industry. That's why it talks about passkeys being based on industry standard. And this is very exciting. I mean, IT is very excited about the potential of passkeys and just kind of getting rid of passwords completely and having your device as your authenticator platform. Very similar to how two-factor authentication works, but with passkeys it's sort of doing everything. It's not just doing the second layer of authentication. The only slight problem with this move to passkeys is we're going to have the same sort of slight issue that we've had with trying to integrate two-factor authentication into schools, and I imagine possibly the same problem even in certain workplaces as well, which is it's this difficulty, isn't it, of having your mobile device available when you're in the classroom, for example. So you've got security and safeguarding kind of at war with each other a little bit in this arena, because safeguarding is saying, no, you can't have your personal device with you as a teacher in the classroom because it could be used to take pictures of children, it could be used to... a child could get hold of it if you don't have a lock code on your phone, or whatever the safeguarding concerns are there with having a mobile device in the classroom. Even if your device has been hacked, potentially somebody could be listening on the microphone, who knows? Then you've got two-factor authentication as a requirement for security, but that requires your mobile device. So I think we're going to start to see the same thing with passkeys. I don't know how that's going to be solved. I don't know whether somebody's going to create a specific device that only does those sort of keys or something like that and isn't a full-on smartphone, for example. But generally, I think this update is fantastic. I love the fact that Google are betaing this and integrating this into their platforms. I will definitely be interested in using the passkey feature and looking at how it works for us within Strawberry 7, I think.
Yeah, I really like this, and there's a couple of things that jumped out at me that I thought, yes, this is actually really good. So first off, when it said that passkeys can be 2 times faster and 4 times less error prone than passwords, I completely agree with that, because you don't really need to remember your password. And where it's saying that it's faster, so I use facial recognition to unlock my phone, and I know that the technology behind that has come leaps and bounds over the last couple of years, whereas I know when it first came out as a feature, it was cool, but it would almost be a 50-50 as to whether you could actually unlock your phone with your face or not. Now, almost a good 98% of the time, it unlocks my phone with my face immediately. So I can definitely see how it's going to save so much time with that, and also knowing that this feature will actually work, you could then be encouraged to have a much more secure password on your Google account. Because it wouldn't matter if you have like a 15, 24, whatever, however many characters, a really complex password on your Google account, because you don't actually really need to remember it. You just need to have your face available to unlock your device to then access it. So yeah, so I do actually really like this update, but I do agree with you. I was thinking in a school environment or a place of work, somewhere where basically you can't really have your phone available, how would it be introduced to there? I think that you might actually be able to get some kind of device they could use purely for this. I'm not too sure, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what options are available in that kind of situation. But on the whole, I do really like this update.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you've said there, Adam. And it will be interesting to see what sort of devices, if any, come out to cater to those people who can't have their devices with them to do this. And I completely agree about, reducing the error of entry and it being faster. I mean, we use a password manager. So we're sort of in a situation where we don't need to remember our passwords, and indeed we don't know any of our passwords for most of our accounts because the password manager takes care of them, and they are very complex and long. But even with the password manager, as you and I have both experienced, it can. It's not so much that the password manager goes wrong, it's just it can be a little bit confused sometimes when you're updating your password or you're entering details and you're sort of changing your password. It can get a little bit confusing. And I think that, like you say, with the facial recognition technology and things on the smartphones just getting so good, it makes perfect sense to utilize that in this arena where you're signing in on a device that doesn't have those features. You're effectively using that hardware from the phone to then sign in on a device where it doesn't have that hardware.
Yes, I could also see where maybe in order to actually set this up in the first place, or for it to be used all the time, occasionally you would have to manually enter your password as well. And if you then have entered some complex password, that may be a bit of a challenge potentially, or maybe it's not readily available that you can. So we can just say copy and paste between various devices. So even if I do have to manually enter my password, then I can say just copy it on my laptop and then paste it on my phone, and away I go. Like, it's fine, and then the rest takes care of itself. But for the average user, for a home user, maybe I could see that's potentially going to be a barrier, but I'm not too sure if once it has been initially set up, if this passkey would then just work indefinitely, or maybe once a month, once every 90 days, once a week, who knows. Then it would ask for you to manually enter your password, almost just to re-authenticate that you are still you.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Adam. And it's one of the things that I was thinking about this as well, was whether when you turn this on, whether it's effectively replacing your password or whether it's your password's still there in the background, you're just using passkey as well. I imagine it's that the password is still there, you're just using passkey as well. But it's a very good point as to whether it does want you to re-authenticate after a certain amount of time, just like biometrics does on your iPhone or your Android, where after a certain amount of time it'll go, oh, I need you to enter your password. So yeah, it will be interesting to see that. What's the getting started here, Adam?
Okay, so for the admins can allow users in their organization to skip passwords at signing using a passkey. By default, this setting will be off, which means that users can't skip passwords during sign-in, but can still create and use passkeys as a two-step verification method. To allow users to skip passwords, administrators can follow some very simple steps in the admin console, and I've added a link in our document to do that. But there's a graphic as well, and that looks like you would need to go to security, then authentication, and then passwordless should become an available option, and then within that area then you can set up your preferences how you would like. For the end users, if it has been enabled by your admin, you can go to g.co/passkeys to start using passkeys instead of passwords, or as a two-step verification method. You could also visit Google's Help Center to learn more about signing in with a passkey instead of a password, and of course I've added a link in our document to that.
Great, thank you very much, Adam. What's the rollout phase here? When are people going to be able to start using this, and who is this available for?
So, rapid release and scheduled release, there is a gradual rollout, which means potentially up to 15 days for the feature to become visible everywhere, which started on June the 5th, and this is going to be available to all Google Workspace customers and Cloud Identity customers as well.
That's really, really nice to hear.
I'm almost surprised, actually, pleasantly surprised, but I'm almost surprised that they have just made this available to everyone. I almost thought it would be a higher tier thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the slightly cynical part of me is saying the reason they've made it available to everybody is because Google wants to gather as much data on this as possible. Not people's biometrics, obviously. Google have said they're not recording that. But as much data in terms of successful or failed authentication, I'd imagine. And also I think they're trying to gather data on who's taking this up, how much of an appetite is there for this in the wider world in terms of consumers and in terms of users. Good to hear that it started June the 5th. That's a few days ago. So we should, after you've listened to this podcast, lovely listeners, there shouldn't be too much longer to wait for it to become visible. And it's also nice as well, as you said earlier, Adam, you don't have to enroll in a specific beta. It's just a open beta. So it's there if you want to turn it on and try it out, but just do bear in mind that it's in beta, so it might not work perfectly. So thank you.
That's okay. And I was just going to add, to remember, it is off by default. So you will need to go in and turn it on if it is something that you would like your organisation to be using.
Yep, absolutely, Adam. Yep, very good reminder. Thank you very much, Adam. What have we got next?
Up next, we have a Google Chat update. So you can now write messages faster and easier with Smart Compose in Google Chat. So Google has made it easier for you to write high quality emails and content faster with Smart Compose in Gmail and Google Docs. This machine learning powered feature suggests relevant contextual phrases as you type, which saves you time by cutting back on repetitive writing and also reduces spelling and grammatical errors. Google is very excited to announce Smart Compose is now available in Google Chat on the web. Coupled with Smart Reply, an existing assistive tool that suggests short replies to messages, this feature will help you communicate with colleagues quicker and more conversations or projects forward more efficiently. Many rely on chat for their immediate communication needs whilst juggling competing priorities. This feature helps you compose messages faster and easier, saving time and effort. And just an additional note on this, that Smart Compose is available in English, Spanish, Portuguese, French and Italian.
That's excellent, Adam. I don't want to go too much into Smart Compose because we talked about it before. I think most people are familiar with it now, but it's basically where it just tries to guess at what you're typing and you can fill it in automatically by hitting the tab key. If you use Google Docs, Gmail, as it says in the update, you'll be very familiar with how Smart Compose works. So it makes perfect sense that they're bringing this into Google Chat as well. So that, yeah, I think that's a lovely little addition, lovely little feature added on there. And I think it's great that it's available in those few languages as well. That's really nice to see.
Yes, yeah, I like this. I did think it was quite funny where Google say that many rely on Google Chat for their immediate communication, but I don't know about you, but if somebody wants to get hold of me immediately, they phone me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, Google Chat is a great way to get a hold of me, but if you want immediate contact, you're going to phone me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely true. And we've had it a few times where the Google Chat notifications just don't come through. They have gotten better. They have gotten a lot better over time, but even so, sometimes they just don't come through. So yeah, I think that's quite funny. Immediate. Right, so what's the getting started for this?
Okay, so for the admins, there is no admin control for this feature. Smart Compose in Chat respects the user's smart features and personalization setting. So a default value of this setting can be controlled by the admins. You can also visit Google's Help Center to learn more about turning on or off Gmail, Chat and Meet smart features and personalization. For the end users though, the people that are actually going to be using this feature will be on by default, but it can be disabled by unchecking the Enable Predictive Suggestions as you compose a message on the web and desktop option under Smart Compose within Chat settings. When you see a suggestion that you like, you can just press the Tab key on your keyboard to accept it. There's also a link in our document to Google's Help Center if you'd like to learn more about using Smart Compose in Google Chat.
Great, thank you, Adam. That's a really snappy sort of setting there, isn't it?
It just rolls off the tongue.
Just rolls off the tongue. Enable predictive suggestions as you compose a message on the web and desktop. Okay, great. Thank you, Adam. What's the rollout pace and availability here?
Okay, so the rollout, rapid release, there's an extended rollout, so potentially longer than 15 days, which started on June the 5th. Scheduled release, there's also a gradual rollout. There is a gradual rollout, which is starting on June the 26th. This update is going to be available to all Google Workspace customers and also users with a personal Google account.
My God, available to everybody again. Google have just been so generous. Gosh, I feel like I'm at the ambassador's ball being spoiled with Ferrero Rocher. Other chocolates are available. It's interesting that it's scheduled rollout as of June 26th. That's quite, for Google anyway, for these updates, that's quite far away. They're announcing that quite early, so that's interesting to see. But all good. Maybe it's because the rapid release is June the 5th, so there's quite a gap there. Thank you very much for that, Adam. What have we got next, please?
Up next, we have a Google Classroom update. So you can now visit a class using a new option in Google Classroom. So previously, education leaders and other support staff had to be added as permanent co-teachers in Google Classroom if they wanted to provide support to teachers, manage substitutes, or check on student progress. Google is introducing the ability to visit a Google Classroom, which allows permissioned users to temporarily access classes to support educators, post announcements, view student profiles, and more, all without being assigned as a permanent co-teacher. So education leaders and support staff members can now temporarily access classes and avoid unnecessary notifications and homepage clutter. So there's a little bit more on this. So principals, department heads, school counsellors, curriculum leaders, administrative assistants, coaches, mentors, IT admins, and other such types of education leaders and support staff members that will benefit most from this feature. However, super admins can use their discretion in choosing who gets access to this feature and to which classes.
Yeah, thank goodness that this has come out, that Google's done this update. I think this is absolutely fantastic. Really, really good update to Google Classroom, this, and a really long time coming. It also confirms our conspiracy theory, Adam, that Google are obviously listening to our podcast and taking... They're obviously listening to our podcast and taking intense notes, because only last week I mentioned how I wish that Google would introduce this feature and make it a bit easier for admins, particularly to be able to go into different classes in Google Classroom. I think it was last week. Go into Google Classroom and go to the different classes without having to be added as teachers constantly. So Google are obviously listening. They're obviously hanging on our every word, Adam, listening to this podcast. But this is great. This is a really, really nice feature. I'm really pleased to see this, and I'm sure any admins listening who are administering education will also be very, very pleased to hear that this is happening. So please, Adam, tell us, how do we get started with this? How do we use this?
Okay, so for the admins, this feature will be off by default to ensure super admins can designate which individuals or groups within the organisation have access to this feature. To appoint users with temporary class access within the admin console, then you'll need to create a new custom admin role in the admin console with the Manage Classes privilege. And to do that, you would go to the admin console, go to Menu, Account, Admin Roles, Create New Role. Add a name, which could be something like Education Leaders or something that is fitting, and a description to the new role. From the privileged name list, select Classroom, Manage Classes, and if preferred, other privileges can also be selected. So tailor that to most appropriate. You can then assign the new custom admin role to select users or security groups. To limit access to specific classes, scope, and user's role to an organisation unit. You could also visit Google's Help Center to learn more about designated users with temporary class access. Link is in the document for that. But for the end users to get started with this, when the Manage Classes privilege has been enabled by your admin, you can search for classes from the Classroom homepage. Upon selecting a class to visit, you'll be prompted to notify the teacher with the reason for the visit, which I find a bit interesting, that last bit. So, first of all, I'm really curious to see, because it says that you need to search for the class. So I'm thinking maybe you wouldn't just see all the classes that are available for you to access, I think it sounds like you would need to know the name of the class that you want to go to, so then you could then search for it to then enter it. Also find it a bit interesting that you'll be prompted to notify the teacher with a reason why you're visiting that class. I think that may deter some users, because maybe if it's one example might be a member of senior management or SLT, somebody would say, oh, I'd just like to have a look at these handful of classes. They wouldn't necessarily want to give the teacher an explanation, because they kind of have the authority to go and have a look anyway. And in that situation, I wonder if admins would just end up just making them a teacher of the class instead of giving them temporary access, which is what they would actually only require. They just don't need to justify the reason for the temporary access.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah, absolutely. I think Google have probably stuck that in just to be on the safe side, to create some sort of audit log of this is why,
a paper trail of what's going on and why.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, so I think it's logical that they put it in, but that's a good point that you've brought up about the motivation of SLT, or the fact that they might not want to disclose to the teacher the reason or something like that. There might be a specific scenario for that. So yeah, I think in that scenario, probably they would just be made co-teachers, or they would be made teachers in that scenario by the super admin or by the teacher themselves. So I think there's sort of a workaround for that, but it's a good point that you bring up there, Adam. I mean, I think generally this feature is just brilliant. I think it's fantastic. It's so useful for admins to be able to go into these classes and make changes when they need to. But it is good to know from an admin point of view that you do, or a teacher point of view, that you do need to know the classroom name, like you say, because you've got to search for it.
Yes, yeah. As you were saying from the beginning, this is a great update. It's definitely a very good update, and I can see how this is going to be so helpful. Whether it's a supply teacher or somebody's just covering somebody else because their main teacher is on some kind of leave. Maybe they're on a school trip for a couple of weeks or whatever. So you don't need permanent access, but it's more of a temporary measure. Then I think this is definitely going to be very helpful for those teachers and teaching staff out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Adam. What's the rollout pace here and availability?
Okay, so the rollout pace for the admin console. Rapid release and scheduled release, there is a gradual rollout which started on June the 6th. For the Google Classroom side of this, rapid release and scheduled release, there is also a gradual rollout which is starting on June the 12th.
Okay, that makes sense. So they're kind of creating a bit of a gap there, so that it's on the admin console first of all. Give admins a chance to turn it on if they want to, deploy it out, and then it's going to be available to the end users a bit later down the line. So that makes sense. And who's this available for, Adam? I assume education.
So, to access this feature, users must have a Google Workspace for Education Plus license assigned to them. So it's within Google Classroom, so it's very much within education, obviously. I think that kind of goes without saying. But you do need to have an Education Plus license assigned to you in order to use this feature.
Oh, interesting that they've only given that to Education Plus clients. Okay, so that's another feature that's only available in the paid tier of Google Education. Okay, interesting to know. Thank you, Adam. What have we got next?
Up next, we have a Google Meet update. So there's now an improved experience for admitting or denying join requests within Google Meet. Google has heard requests from their customers to update the experience for admitting participants in Google Meet. Currently, the admitting dialog can disrupt access to other meeting features. Additionally, because the dialog box can take up so much space, users can feel pressured to quickly accept or deny requests in order to dismiss the notification and continue with their meeting. For a better experience, Google has moved join requests to the People panel. And from there, users can take their time reviewing join requests without disrupting the overall meeting experience and without blocking functionality of other meeting features.
Yeah, I just think it's a lovely update. Really, really nice. And the graphic shows this very, very nicely as to the difference. Like you said before, Adam, the before and after really, really just tells explains it in 1,000 word. No,
A picture tells 1,000 words.
Thank you, Adam. Get there in the end. It really does, and it's a much, much better interface, much nicer. I think Google have made a really nice improvement on this and done a really good job. So lovely to see this update. I've only got positive things to say about this update. I think it's really, really nice.
It's great. But I actually have a feeling that other platforms, that I think Teams also do it the exact same way. It's a good update. We do like to see it.
We do not mention Teams on this podcast, Adam. No, I agree with you. Yeah, they're probably following suit with some of the other platforms out there. I just think it's really, really nice. So when are people going to start to see this feature, and who is this available for, Adam?
So, rapid release, full rollout, which may take 1 to 3 days, started on June the 7th. So, by the time of release of this podcast, it will probably be available to you. Scheduled release is starting on June the 15th. And this update is going to be available to all Google Workspace customers and also users with a personal Google account.
Oh my gosh, another Ferrero Rocher update. This is absolutely amazing, huh? Mr. Rocher, you're spoiling us. Thank you very much, Adam. What have we got next?
Up next, we have another admin update. So, updated user interface for the email log search tool. Google has updated the email log search interface, helping admins find relevant information faster, whether their query is simple or dynamic. So admins can use the predefined search tab for basic searches, such as all messages from today, yesterday, or the last 7 days, or also messages sent or received within your primary domain since yesterday. You can access the custom search tab if you need to expand your search parameters. This will allow you to enter information such as a message ID or sender IP into predefined fields for faster searching. By enabling admins to find and troubleshoot missing email messages, see the status of messages after they've been delivered and more, this update helps admins stay on top of the flow of emails in their domain regardless of their size of the organisation.
Yeah, very, very nice. Yeah, I mean, very nice update. Very useful. I'm sort of a little bit confused about this update because the graphic definitely helps. I kind of do get what Google are doing here, but the thing is, I've always personally found the custom search, which is, I think what they're saying is basically the custom search is what is default at the moment. That's the only thing you see. And they've added this new predefined search tab, which is going to have some of the most common things that people search for, which I guess they've gathered from some anonymous data. I think that's great. That is wonderful. Personally, I've always actually found the custom search so good, or what it is at the moment, so good. I've never gone in there and thought to myself, oh gosh, I can't find, like this, there's a lot of clicks to enter things here, or there's a lot of things to put in here to find what I'm after. I've actually always found the email log search exceptionally easy to use and exceptionally good, but maybe the predefined searches are going to make it even easier, and I'll go in there and there'll be some really nice stuff in there. I won't know until I start using it, but it's nice to see. I mean, I think it is good. What I would have liked to have seen rather than this is a similar thing, but more in the alert center arena, because the alert center I actually find, and also in the Google Drive log arena or area as well, because I find the email log search very easy to use personally, but the Google Drive logs and the other things are a little bit more of a challenge. I mean, you can still use them, but I just find them not quite as user friendly. I haven't actually used any of the other logs particularly, so maybe those ones are the same. I use drive logs, and I use drive logs. I use like user logs. I'm just having a look at the moment. Not much else, and I just find that they're not that easy to look through. The information in there is great, but they're not that easy to filter through sometimes. So I would like to see that interface improve a little bit. But this one for the email log search is predefined things. I mean, yeah, cool. I think they're going to be handy.
Yeah, I'm sure this will hopefully be very helpful for some people out there. I was just thinking maybe you find that the custom search so helpful, or you're used to using that, because I'm imagining you're looking for something specific, so you can enter the specific criteria within the custom search to find exactly what you're looking for, whereas this may be a bit more broad. But then again, if you're going into the log, you'd have a reason for going into the log, so you must be looking for something specific if you're there in the first place anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe it just kind of helps users just to get started, to say, I know I'm looking for something that was sent a couple of days ago, and then they could just use almost essentially a quick search to see if it quickly pops up before they would need to go into the custom search to dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of shown in the example that they've given, because the example that they've given is the predefined search says all messages from today. But the thing is, if you go into the custom search and you just say messages from today, that is the same thing. That's what it does. It's because I'm going in there right now, and you can go into the email log search and you can say date today and just go search, and that's what it will do. It will show you all the messages that were sent or received, or anything that's happened in your domain, with the email. So I don't.
It saves you a mouse click.
Yeah, saves you a mouse click. Yeah, saves you clicking one thing on the drop down. Maybe they've tried to. Maybe it's more to do with the wording, the fact that the predefined search says all messages from today, whereas if you were doing it on the custom search, you would select the time period as today, and it's not obvious that you don't need to enter anything else. You can just click search. I think you're right, Adam. I think because I've gotten used to using it, I don't really find it that confusing or a challenge, so that's probably what it is. I think it's very similar to the chat update that we talked about last week, where they kind of created that new splash dashboard or whatever, where it's like, hey, what do you want to do today? Do you want to send a message? Do you want to make a space? Do you want to do this? You and I were kind of looking at it and going, oh, okay, well, I know how to do all of that. But for somebody fresh into Google Chat, maybe that it's not that obvious for them to be able to navigate their way around. So, cool. I'm not complaining about the update. It's a good update. I just, I'm not too sure exactly what the point is of it fully, but I'm probably just a bit too used to using the email log search.
Something I did wonder about this, edit this out if you're not too sure. So Google's wording, I wasn't too sure. Where it says sender IP, do you know, what does IP stand for? So I always think IP, Internet Protocol, as in an IP address, whereas in the example, that IP, that looks as if it's a user's email address. So then I thought that would be like a user ID, but what's sender IP? Do you happen to know what that means?
Yeah, so you are right. It is the IP address. So it's because if you have a look in the graphic that's in there, you see it says sender email above. So that's their email address. But you can also put in the sender IP as well. And the reason that Google give you that feature is because let's say that somebody has sent you an email from a specific organization, and you don't necessarily know what the sender's specific email address is, but you just want to see all of the emails that were sent from that organisation, and they've got static IP, which they've maybe got an on-prem email server or something like that, then you can put the sender IP in. It's quite specific. I understand why you've questioned it, because you're probably thinking, like, when are you going to know that? Yeah, it is quite specific, but do bear in mind that in the email headers, it often gives you that sender IP address. And even if somebody's using, say, Google Workspace or Office 365, I'm not 100% sure on this, but you might find, I'm pretty sure in the Office 365 arena and also Google Workspace, you can actually have a static IP address. Even though it's in the cloud, you can still have your own kind of static IP address. So that's what that's used for.
See, I think I may have misinterpreted that slightly, because where it was saying that you can search for the sender IP, and within the graphic you can see sender, and then it just lists the email addresses. I was thinking it was something slightly different. So I'm thinking in the graphic you don't actually see the sender IP, but I thought that was the part that it was referring to.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Yeah. Sure. So it's. You are right. It is sender Internet Protocol, IP address. So, but I agree with you. Why you're a bit confused, because it's not something you'd often know. I think it's a bit of an old school thing that they've put in for people who still have maybe on-prem email servers or something like that. But I imagine it would be useful under certain situations. Thank you, Adam. What's the getting started on here? I think it's fairly straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah, so for the admins, you can visit Google's Help Center if you would like to learn more about finding messages with the email search log. A note on that when returning to the email log search tool, you'll get to the predefined search or custom search tab based on your previous visit to the tool.
Oh, okay. That's very useful to know, actually. Sorry to interrupt you, Adam, but that's actually very useful to know, because that was one of the things that I was thinking was, I'm probably not going to use the predefined search at all. I'm probably just going to use it as I've always used it. So it's actually really useful to know that if I'm on the custom search most of the time, it'll always take me there. That's really nice, actually.
Okay, good. But it sounds like that is actually going to be quite a useful side of this then, actually. But for the end users to get started, there is no end user action required. For the rollout for this, rapid release and scheduled release, there is a gradual rollout, so up to 15 days for feature visibility, which started on June the 7th. This update is going to be available to Google Workspace Business Starter, Business Standard, Business Plus, Enterprise Standard, Enterprise Plus, Education Fundamentals, Education Standard, Education Plus, the Teaching and Learning Upgrade, Non-Profits, Frontline Starter, and Frontline Standard customers. Did we miss anyone out other than personal accounts?
Yeah, I don't think there's much left there. Yeah, so they it probably would have been better if Google had said who it's not available for. But yeah, that's nice to see that it's very broad across there. I think it's probably just legacy G Suite Basic, and sort of fundamental. Oh no, Education Fundamentals is in there. So yeah, I don't think there's many that haven't been included there. Thank you very much, Adam. That's great. Again, Google obviously listening to us, because last week they didn't put down much availability, even though they had an update that was the admin console and basically said, oh yeah, it's available for everybody. They've obviously listened to our podcast with great intent and gone, oh my God, yeah, we can't get the intern to do that again. Sorry, not knocking interns here, but they said, oh no, we've got to get somebody else to do that. Thank you very much, Adam. What have we got next?
Up next, we have another Google Meet update. So there's enhanced experience for picture-in-picture for Google Meet in Chrome. So if anybody's not familiar, picture-in-picture, it's a little bit like if you minimize your screen. So I always think of it with Windows Media Player back in the day. You could press a button and Windows Media Player would suddenly appear very small on your screen, and you'd still have basic controls to control it, but it wouldn't just be taking up much space on your screen. So that's kind of picture-in-picture, where it's still there, it's still open, you've just kind of shrunk the app a little bit, but it's not minimizing. I hope that makes sense. So Google is updating the Google Meet picture-in-picture experience to be more engaging and feature-rich. Directly from the picture-in-picture window, you can now raise your hand, use the meeting chat, turn captions on or off, more effectively resize the picture-in-picture view, and access flexible layouts. So previously, you could only turn your camera or microphone on or off, or leave a meeting from the picture-in-picture window. The new picture-in-picture experience provides greater flexibility when screen sharing or navigating to a relevant screen for a dynamic experience.
Again, just wonderful update. Really, really nice. Really lovely to see this. I've never actually used the picture-in-picture feature on Google Meet, so I haven't even used the basic picture-in-picture feature, let alone any of the tools that they've added in. But the graphic shows this really, really nicely, and I just think this is a great update. I think it's really nice, interface improvement. They've put really nice tools in here. It looks super neat. Very, very easy to use, and I really like it.
Yes, something that I found really interesting that I hadn't really thought about before. I'm not sure if it's a well-known picture-in-picture feature, or I just happened to have noticed it in the graphics. So although your Google Meet would still be the window at the front of what's going on your screen, on the graphic, they're clicking on something in the background, but it doesn't send the Google Meets behind it. Or say, so in the graphic, they're clicking on an email, but that email that is full screen does not then immediately come to the front of their screen.
Yeah.
So then you can actually still see your meeting to one side within the same screen.
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. Yeah, it's the show window on top feature, basically, is what it's sort of used as before. Yeah, very, very good point, Adam, and very nice to point out for our listeners who don't have access to this graphic. Very nice point to make there. I agree. I think that is absolutely lovely. Really nice feature for them to keep the window on top. Makes perfect sense. And actually something which I've kind of... I mean, I've got a lot of screen real estate here, so it isn't too much of a problem for me to have multiple windows open and have Meet windows open. But there are a lot of occasions when I take my Mac out with me, and it's only 13-inch, so there's not a huge amount of space on the screen. So it's really nice to know that this feature is there for when I've got that condensed screen. I can kind of put that over to one side, and like you say, it stays on top of the other windows. Very, very nice. How do people get started with this then, Adam?
Okay, so for the admins, there's no admin control for this feature. For the end users, so Google recommended that you can visit their help center to learn more about using the picture-in-picture with Google Meet. However, to save you a trip, it's very easy to use. Within your Google Meet meeting, click on the three little dots that you should see at the bottom right next to the end call, or in between end call and potentially raise hand, and then just click on Open Picture-in-Picture mode. And it's as simple as that, and then that should open up picture-in-picture for you.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate that, not having to go off and look at the document for something so simple. That's really nice, Adam. Thank you very much for that little explanation. What's the rollout pace here and availability?
So, rapid release and scheduled release, there is a gradual rollout for this feature, which started on June the 7th. This update is going to be available to all Google Workspace customers and also users with a personal Google account. So, right across the board, available to everybody. Love to see it.
Monsieur Rocher, you are spoiling us too much. Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Adam. I think we've got one more update, haven't we?
That is right. So this one, it's more of a reminder notification instead of an update, because I think we have mentioned this before, but it's
hey Adam,
coming to your attention again.
You said it's a reminder update, and it's about reminders as well. So
So assistant and calendar reminders are automatically migrating to tasks. So in September 2022, Google announced that they would be migrating reminders from Google Calendar and Google Assistant to Google Tasks in order to create a single experience for managing to-dos across Google. So I'm sure we covered it on this podcast, and I'm sure we mentioned it much more recently than that, but it was first mentioned in September, apparently. So over the last several weeks, Google Workspace users had the opportunity to voluntarily migrate their reminders to tasks. It's now being forced. So for Google Workspace users, if you have not already migrated your reminders to tasks, they will be migrated from now, basically. To help ensure a smooth transition, Google would like to remind admins and end users of a couple of things. So for the admins, you should verify the tasks service is on for your organization. If the tasks service is off, any reminders data will not be migrated to tasks, and reminders data deletion will be initiated after June 22nd. So if you are using, if you do have reminders from assistants and calendars to avoid data loss, you definitely do want to have a look into this, because it looks like if you do not take action, then some data will be removed. You should also enable your organization to use Google Takeout in case your users want to export their Assistant and calendar reminders. If your end users want to use Assistant to migrate tasks after the migration, you need to adjust settings for Search and Assistant users and turn on access to Workspace data. If you use a Google account for work or school, if you want a copy of your reminders data and Takeout is enabled by your organization, you should export your reminders data before June 22nd. If you use a personal Google account, if you haven't already migrated, Assistant and Calendar reminders will begin to automatically migrate in June 2023. possibly June 22nd, but it says June. Google will also share more information on their timeline of a future update, and I've added links in our document on how to do most of those things that I just mentioned. So if you are using assistant and calendar reminders, please do check this out, because this could be affecting you, and you definitely you do not want you or anybody within your organization to accidentally lose data.
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. Thank you for all of that information. That's really, really useful, and it's useful for people to know that that's coming up so quickly as well, because we're in June, so that's something that people definitely need to take action on. If that's affecting you, if you're listening and that's affecting you, or it's affecting one of your users, then definitely take some action on that, and look at those really handy links that Adam's put into our document as well to give you some more information on that. It's interesting to know as well that Google's going to share some more information in future updates of personal accounts, which
is that going to be next week? Because this is
not much of
happening
June left.
Within 2 weeks? So it's going to be soon if they're going to say anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, stay tuned to the podcast. So we'll certainly be covering it in the podcast. And just the final thing is, I think this impacts all Google Workspace customers. Is that right? So anybody who's using this feature.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, everybody that is using Assistant and Calendars reminders, this could affect you. So regardless of which tier of Google you are on, if you're using those reminders, then this could be affecting you.
Yeah, okay, no problem. I mean, I don't have too much to say about this because, like you say, it's not really an update. It's more just a notification letting people know. But I just echo what you've said there about checking out this if that does affect you, or even if you just think it affects you, it's worth reading the document because there might be some data deletion there towards the end of June if you're not taking that action.
So, especially if you're an admin, then go check it out anyway, because maybe you're not aware of some people, especially if you have a larger organization, you may not be aware if some people do have these reminders set up. So if you're an admin, just do a bit of due diligence and just go and check anyway, just for give it a good sanity check and just check that everything is as it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very good advice, Adam. We'll probably talk about that on our upcoming team meeting, and it can be a task for everybody. I'll say to everybody it was your idea, so it can be your fault. Lovely. Thank you, Adam. Well, that is it, everybody. That is everything that you need to know about all of the updates happening in the world of Google Workspace. This podcast is available from your regular podcast provider and also in video format, where you can see Adam and I's lovely faces on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/strawberry7. Thank you, as always, very much for joining us this week.
And we'll be back again next week with more updates.
Goodbye.
Bye.